Alright, so now we're going to do a schedule for this guy that's going to show us the public and private in data form. And the way it's going to do that, it's going to read the room information and give us that room information. So if I come in and pick this room here, you'll see over here it has the name of living room, the number 7, but it also has occupancy, department, and floor finish set up. So what we're going to do is we're going to isolate the department because that's going to give us the public and private here. And so I'm going to go ahead and go to my View tab, Schedules, Schedules and Quantities, and I'm going to scroll down and pick Rooms. Click OK. And it's going to ask me what would I like to schedule for this. So I want to go ahead and schedule the department because that is what had the public and private in it. And then I'll go ahead and schedule the name and the number. And I think that might be all we need for right now, but we can always add different things if we want to later. And I'll click OK. And you'll see that it gives the department, the name, and the number. But what I'd like to do is rearrange these so they're not in that particular order. So I'm going to go back to my fields. I'm going to highlight department. I'm going to move it to the end. And maybe I'll move the number to the top. And if I click OK, you'll see it'll rearrange those guys. Now the other thing I want to do is I want it to organize by department. Right? So I'm going to go into my sorting and grouping and say sort by department. And then if I click OK, now it's sorting by department. So I've got public and private, right? And now I want to have a little bit more control over that. So I'm going to go into my sorting and grouping. I'm going to do descending, right? So it's going to flip those. And then I'm going to select by number. So if I click OK, you'll see that it does it by descending, and then when it flips, it starts going by number. I would like it to divide these into separate groups. So I'm going to go back to my sorting and grouping, and I'm going to check blank line, and I'm going to click OK. Now it's dividing between those guys with the blank line. Now I would also like it to have a header here so I can see immediately without having to see this private, private, and public, public, what those are. So I'll go back to sorting and grouping and I'll make a header. And if I click OK, now I've got a public and private. And I also have this NA, which is like closets and stuff and mechanical. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide this column because I now have it as a header. So I'm going to go ahead, select that column, and up here I'm going to click on hide. So now I've got that guy set up. The next thing I want to do is I kind of want to get rid of this NA area here. So I'm going to go to filter. And if I filter by department and I say does not equal NA, click OK, then that goes away. Now the last thing I want to do is total the areas for these. Right, so I'm going to need the areas. I didn't actually put the areas in there, but let's go ahead and get them. So if I go to fields and I get area, and I put that in, now I've got the areas over here, and now I want to total those. So once I have the areas in, I can go to formatting, select area, and tell it to calculate totals. Now this is telling it to calculate it. It's not telling it to show it. You have to tell it to calculate and show. The reason for that is because Revit doesn't calculate things unless you tell it to. And then you need to tell it to show those calculations. So I'm going to click OK now. And then I'm going to go to sorting and grouping. And I am going to tell it to have a footer and to calculate totals only. And then I'm going to do grand totals and totals only and click OK. So now, right, I've got everything totaling out and I have a schedule. So I can name this, public, private. All right. And now I can scroll down and I can go to my sheet with my plans on it, right? I can scroll back up to my public-private schedule and drag that on, right? Now it's looking a little bit different, right, than this one. That one doesn't have any of these sort of lines or anything like that. So if I double click on this guy, if I go to the appearance, right, I can sort of go into the graphics and say, no, I don't want any grid lines. Maybe I don't want to show the title, right? And then click OK. And if I go back to this guy, now I've got that set up the way that I wanted it to. And I can come in, and if I need to adjust sizing, I can do that here, right? If I wanted that name to go ahead, or if I wanted this to be a little smaller, let me see if I can get in here, right? And now that living dining, right? And so I have my schedule there. All right, so that's it for the schedule. Next, we'll move on to how to make this guy, the schematic plan and maybe the dimension plan.